Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
This is True Crime Cast. Jamie here with John. John, I really like our new intro. We've been getting positive feedback from it. You still a fan?
Yeah, I think I like it now more than I did before. Like, I always loved it, but now I was riffing out over here on the air guitar.
Yeah, it certainly is growing on me. Would love to hear your feedback on if you've listened for a while. We've been through 3 to 4 iterations of intro music, so would love to know what you think about the new setup. I'm a big fan. We got a fascinating case today. It's one that's been requested of us, and we're going to dig deep into today's episode. But first, I want to give some thank yous to folks who have written us 5-star reviews over on Apple Podcasts. This one comes from RL Hop. It says, great info, well investigated. Can you check into Deanna Seifert from Warren, Michigan? It's one of those things that you hear about as a kid and never really know what happened. Never heard of that one either, John. That's one that we can add to our ongoing list. Deanna Seifert, giving these reviews is a great way to recommend cases to us. This one comes from a lot of letters. GAJSJSJXHDJDJRH.
Oh, my buddy Jar.
Yeah. Show has been great, but I'm just starting to listen to it. Still 5 stars. Appreciate that. However you like to pronounce that. I would like to, I don't know, we have people pronouncing their names in a number of ways. You could spell it like that, and that could just be Joe. Thank you, Joe.
Or Bob. I was thinking Bob.
Works either way. And can't move on into the episode without giving another shout out to Magic Mind. We are Magic Mind ambassadors, and I think that all boils down to what it's done for us.
Dude, I've tried everything like supplements and vitamins to try to reduce my stress levels and help me to stay cognitively aware and focused throughout the day so I can complete my job at a high level. But I have not found anything on the market that compares to Magic Mind.
And we have a new deal here. It's a one-time deal just for True Crime Cast listeners, and it's only accessible through the link that's in our show notes. Our audience can subscribe and try the shots for free. Only pay shipping for the first 3 bottles pack. Now, is a great deal, and then you'll get to experience a dose, 3 doses actually. This is considered a mental performance shot, and you'll get 3 of those with this code. We'll put the link in the show notes, but you can go to magicmind.com/VIP J&J That's magicmind.com/VIP J&J to get that free trial of those first 3 bottles.
Guys, it's an incredible product, and Jamie and I would not be ambassadors if we didn't wholeheartedly believe in it and personally use it. So we're not just blowing smoke here.
We talk often about the ingredients, and that has not changed. We talk about the matcha and the L-theanine that really just left you to maintain focus. So whether you're just having trouble staying focused at work, staying awake in the afternoon, or you got a new project you want to hone in on, check out that free trial, magicmind.com/VIP J&J trial to check it out.
All right, I have a few folks I want to thank over on Patreon. We have 3 people that joined us this week. First, we have Kate, and then Sally, and then Ryan, all of which came in at the base package. Ryan did take advantage of an annual membership, so over the course of a year, Ryan will save 15% for doing so.
Yeah, we appreciate that, guys. We thank you for all of your support that you give us. That's why we're here, and we want to stick around for a while. So we appreciate all that support, and ready to dive into today's case.
Yeah, man, it's an interesting one, and it takes me back to one of the happiest times in my life, the 1980s. But it wasn't happy for this family. So why don't you get the ball rolling?
We can go to Saturday, August 5th of 1989, and this day was like any other day for the main character in today's story, that is Tracy Kroh. She left her home in Interline Township, Pennsylvania, to go to her sister's house in Alex Acres Trailer Park in Halifax, which is just about 7 miles away. She was on her way to return a barbecue grill that she had borrowed and to drop off some coupons that she had clipped, basically just to stop by your sister's house type situation. Her sister Tammy wasn't home, so Tracy left everything out on the front porch, which you could do in the 80s without it getting stolen. She got back in her car, and after she left Tammy's house, nobody has ever seen her again.
Tracy and Tammy's parents, Ivan and Ellen Kroh, were not worried at first. I mean, this is the 1980s, Jamie. Things, I don't know, there wasn't as much shenanigans. Our parents didn't seem to have tabs on us. They didn't have cell phones to keep track of us. You know, it was kind of you come and you go. And Tracy was 17 years old, and she was known to spend the night at her 20-year-old sister's home very often. But when they called Tammy the next morning and discovered Tracy wasn't there, they immediately called the police because they knew something wasn't right. Ivan, being the dad that he was, went straight to his car, started driving around to look for his daughter. And it wasn't long before he found Tracy's 1971 Mercury Comet in the Millersburg town square. So the car was parked and locked in front of Leopart's Five and Dime, just a few minutes from her sister's house. Now, this Five and Dime was a popular hangout spot for teenagers, so Tracy's parents figured that she stopped there just to see some friends on her way home from her sister's house.
And this, like you mentioned, not being able to track folks, I can pull up my phone and see exactly where my kids' phones are, at least right now. But in the 80s, it was kind of a I'll see you when you see you type situation. And her going out and doing this was a regular occurrence. This wasn't a special situation. She was going to a different place. She was breaking a routine. This was a normal day. So for her to disappear from that popular area just makes this so much more mysterious. And that continued. Tracy was not the kind of girl that went anywhere without telling her family. That was my rule growing up of you can go out, just tell me where you're going to be in case I need you.
That was the rule at my home too.
She never ran away from home or had never even talked about running away from home that we know of. Her belongings and her cash were still left in her room. And often when we look at a missing person, we ask that question of, did they just run away to start a new life? And there's no indication of this.
And it wasn't a small amount of cash. I mean, in my research, I saw that it was like around $700, right?
Yeah, which I don't know how inflation works exactly, but that's thousands of dollars.
That's
today.
a lot of money for a teenager in the 1980s that if you were trying to run away and start over, you'd have that money on you.
And that's cash. So that's untraceable money that even then, back when you used to have to scan your credit cards on like a triplicate piece of paper.
Do you remember that?
I worked in a store.
Slider?
I had to do that.
Me too.
Often. It was
a
not
lot
a
of
good
kids
time.
have no idea what we're talking about.
It was so much work to scan a credit card. We know that Tracy was responsible. She was involved in things. She was very artistic. She was an excellent student at the Halifax area high school. She was an artist for the school newspaper and was an editor for the yearbook. In fact, Tracy spent the whole summer working on the yearbook so that everything would be perfect for her classmates to get right to work when classes started.
Other students spoke up, and they were certain that Tracy had not left on her own. They backed up the stories that Tracy was extremely responsible and really looking forward to her future. She was in the top 10% of her class and wanted to go to college and major in business. Investigators and volunteers passed out missing persons flyers throughout the area. Ivan, her father, worked in the maintenance department of the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, and he even handed out copies of the missing posters to his coworkers. I can't imagine as a dad, man, knowing that my daughter is missing and having to go to work and hand out these flyers. Like the agony in my soul would be overwhelming.
And I would think hopelessness, or helplessness, I can hand these flyers out, but how is it actually making a difference? It's so hard to know, but you have to do something, I would think.
Yeah, people even posted these flyers along the entire length of the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Ellen would admit that she and her husband feared the worst almost immediately, which I think as a parent, that's where your mind always goes. She said, quote, "The first thing that came to our minds was that someone took her. That was it. That was what we thought right away. But as far as thinking where she might be, all kinds of thoughts run through my mind, end quote. They worried that Tracy was taken against her will. Ivan took a week off work so he could continue looking for his daughter. They really dropped everything to do this, which is what you would hope parents would do. And I think if anybody had thought that maybe they had something to do with something that happened to Tracy, that this alleviates that. But weeks and weeks went by without any sign and without any leads. Neighbors started pulling their money together for a reward fund. And by the end of the following month, they had raised $5,000 for any information that led to finding Tracy. Again, that's a lot of money at that time. Pennsylvania Crime Stoppers added another $1,000, but they got very few tips. And John, there's currently still a manhunt in Kentucky right now, and it's a different kind of missing person, but we're still waiting on tips to come in. And I know all kinds of fake tips are coming, but even at this time, they weren't even getting a ton of fake tips. It was almost radio silence, which I think is the last thing you want.
The Pennsylvania State Police ended up forming a task force to help look into Tracy's disappearance, but they didn't find any solid leads. 5 months after her disappearance, so this would be January of 1990, employees of one of the local plastics factories donated money to have several large signs posted in town with Tracy's information put up both in Millersburg and Halifax. So detectives at that point did receive a tip that Tracy's body might be in a pond in Halifax. So on March 18th, 1990, scuba divers were sent to search the pond, which was approximately 70 yards wide and 14 feet deep. That's a deep pond. Most ponds around here, a few feet deep.
You can stand up and be okay.
Officials told reporters that the pond was thoroughly searched, but no evidence of Tracy was found.
And that's kind of the issue with living in a kind of rural area, right? I know they were kind of close to Harrisburg, which is the capital of Pennsylvania, but there are so many places when you have no idea where to start. So the effort and money it takes to search a pond like this is quite a bit. On Tracy's 18th birthday, she had been missing for 9 months. Her mother said that she was on her mind all day. Normally, she would be having cake with her. So on a day that you would normally be spending with and loving Tracy, she wasn't there. The next month would have been her senior prom, and her friends went, and they know Tracy had been talking about it even the previous year before she would have been going. June of 1990 would have been her high school graduation, but still no word on where Tracy was. Officers were really at a loss. They had no new leads. Every lead they had, the investigation hit a dead end. Ellen believed that somebody in the area, likely somebody that knew the family, was probably withholding information about Tracy. She was certain that somebody in Millersburg knew something and was hopeful that being in a small town that it would come out eventually.
The police interviewed more than 100 people in the first few months of Tracy's disappearance, but no one really had any significant clues to what could have happened to this young woman. The police sergeant told reporters, quote, "I'm still hopeful that we're going to be able to solve it. You don't know what is going to trigger the investigation and finally start tying the pieces of the puzzle together," end quote. 3 years had come and gone by the time Tracy's photo was featured in a mass mailing sent by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So this letter was sent to more than 50 million homes across the United States. And you can imagine that this is a big deal for the family. So there was a lot of hope surrounding that this mailing could be something that could be useful in the case and hopefully get some leads, but it didn't. It didn't get any new leads. In September of 1992, police received a jailhouse tip saying that a convicted felon named Larry Ramp was responsible for Tracy's disappearance. So the informant told detectives that Ramp told him that he had taken Tracy Kroh and buried her near the Roanoke, Virginia area. And he also said that Ramp claimed that he kept Tracy's high school ring as a souvenir. Well, this is huge. If detectives can get a search warrant, go in there, raid his house while he's in jail, and find something that belonged to Tracy, that would be monumental. So detectives did follow up on this tip, but it eventually fell apart. There was no evidence Ramp was in the area when Tracy disappeared, and when they searched his home, there was nothing connecting Ramp to Tracy discovered.
And we see these jailhouse snitches or jailhouse stories all the time, and sometimes they're reliable. Most of the time, somebody's trying to get something out of the situation, and there would be more leads and more breaks in the case. And after the break, we'll dive into the next big lead that came in November 1993. November 1993, about 4 years after she had gone missing, was the biggest break yet in this case. Somebody, a farmer in Washington Township, Pennsylvania, found Tracy's driver's license and her National Honor Society card on his farm. That's huge. This is something to say that she was here or her belongings were here after she was last seen.
And this is the biggest lead they've had in years. I mean, unfortunately, it's been years that have went by at this point.
And really the only tangible one with actual physical evidence. An investigator said that high water from the creek nearby had washed the items into the property. So maybe she hadn't been on that farm, but she had been near that creek. They searched the area and they found more items connected to Tracy. But that information has never been made public. So we don't know exactly what they found. The items were sent to the State Police Crime Lab for analysis, and in May of the next year, it's 1994 now, police got another tip that Tracy and two other women were living in Texas. They said that Tracy was with Beth Miller, who was a missing Colorado woman, and Tiffany Sessions, a woman missing from Florida, and that all three had been trafficked there to work as sex workers. So they were involved in sex trafficking. Again, they followed up on this tip, but hit another dead end.
In December of 2008, almost 20 years after Tracy disappeared, the Pennsylvania State Police put up another billboard along a very busy road in Halifax just to remind the public about Tracy, trying to keep it in people's minds, although it had been a long time since it happened. The billboard included an age progression photo of what Tracy would look like in 2008 at the age of 35 years old. So thinking that if she was trafficked and is still alive, this is what she might potentially look like. Then in 2014, on the 25th anniversary, they released another photo, this time showing what Tracy may look like at the age of 42. The county attorney there, Fran Chardo, told reporters, quote, "After 25 years, we can say this was a criminal act that resulted in death. The circumstances of her death are such that she had every intention of returning, and something prevented her from doing just that. She was very close to her family," end quote.
Yeah, and this is tough, right? Because if there's no body, it's more difficult to prosecute. Certainly not impossible, but it makes it harder to show, because in the course of a trial, you have to show there was a death. This person caused that death, and then go into intention and that kind of thing. So finding a body is kind of paramount if you're hoping to do any type of prosecution. In August of 2019, two individuals from Halifax were arrested and charged with perjury for lying to a grand jury. So not arrested for murder, but they were arrested as it pertained to something they had told a grand jury about this case. Mary Mallett, who was 54 years old at the time, had first told police in 2018 that she had heard directly from Matthew Webster, same age, that he told her that he had raped and murdered Tracy Kroh. She said Matthew and some of his friends saw Tracy in the Millersburg Square, which is where her car was found, the night that she went missing. Holly said Matthew told her it was supposed to be a rape and done, but things got out of hand and he ended up killing her. Matthew denied that this ever happened, and he was actually caught on tape on a wiretap telling Holly that she could not give this story on the grand jury. She could not make this her testimony. And then she later did change it. So based on this wiretap, we know that they both lied in their testimony to the grand jury. So that's why they're arrested for perjury, and the wiretap was introduced as evidence, and both were charged. They ended up searching Matthew's property, but they didn't find anything that ever led to information about Tracy having been there at all, let alone after she was last seen.
In 2022, this would be 33 years after Tracy disappeared, investigators started getting to know Mark Eugene Warfel. Now, Warfel was 89 years old, and he had been in prison for 3 years awaiting a trial for an old burglary charge. That's a ripe old age, right? To be in jail.
Yeah.
It was actually his children that got him on the police radar, though. They came forward with suspicions that this gentleman, I shouldn't say gentleman, that this guy, Warfel, had actually killed their mother, which was his wife, Doris Warfel, by poisoning her. So by May 2022, Pennsylvania State Police announced Warfel was under investigation for the murder of his wife and also the disappearance of Tracy Kroh and multiple sexual assaults. And that's when this story gets a little bit weirder.
Yeah, if it's not weird enough, this older man, which he's 89 in 2022, so you can do the math there that when she disappeared was about 33 years earlier. He's in his mid-50s when she disappeared, so it's certainly in the realm of possibility that he would have been at the right age to do this. And that's when we start to see a connection between Warfel and Tracy. It turns out that their families were very close. Tracy's dad, Ivan, worked at Warfel's auto shop, and Tracy would come by every now and then just to see her dad. Warfel doted on the Kroh girls, often gave them attention. He would give them gifts. But what no one knew until 2022 was that Tracy's mom and Warfel had had a secret affair. And Warfel was actually the biological father of Tracy's youngest sister. Ivan died in 2006, so it's unclear if he knew that the youngest daughter was not biologically his. So this is tough, John, for your whole life to be upended, for the rest of Tracy's siblings and other family and friends to find out that there was this secret, and this kid who we thought was attached to our father or attached to Ivan is no longer, and our mother had been cheating on him. That's a huge shakeup for this family, right?
Absolutely. Warfel was actually a fixture in the Kroh home, and all along, investigators believed Tracy's abductor was someone she knew. And they believe that because that's stereotypically the case, is a kid is abducted by someone they know. In 2022, Tracy's youngest sister was allowed to go visit Warfel in the hospital, and she secretly recorded the conversation where he says, "They put me in prison because I was connected with Tracy." And he didn't know she was being recorded, or he was being recorded. He said later that he didn't kill her, but he knew who did, and that man threw her body down a mine shaft. If you're this connected to the family and you love these girls, wouldn't that be knowledge that you would have given to the police 30, 40 years ago? This seems to me like one of the most plausible scenarios, but we can talk more about that later. After he was announced as an official suspect, police searched his property for evidence, and this announcement came in the middle of Warfel's burglary trial, which would turn out to be more important than anyone ever thought it would. So the judge in that trial, which again was just for burglary, determined that he was incompetent to stand trial and that this situation would not likely improve, meaning his mental capacity. So that's it. I mean, if he's not able to stand trial for a burglary charge, are they able to pursue any charges and convictions for him? I mean, I think they need to investigate it and file charges if appropriate, but it doesn't seem like through the legal process he's going to be held accountable if he's not able to stand trial. But the DA, in this case, Steele Chardo, was not giving up, and they applied for a second competency hearing.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he's already 89. Is he going to be able to increase his mental capacity or mental health capacity to be able to stand trial. It's very concerning at this point. And the story he told, John, was that she was in, and the only way he referred to the killer that he said he knew was Big Goofus. And you can find audio clips of him talking about Big Goofus ended up choking Tracy to death. So it seems that, I don't know, he either knows something or he is perhaps maybe just out of his mind. Pennsylvania State Police spent 10 days performing a controlled demolition of one of Warfel's former homes so that they could search it for evidence thoroughly. They hoped to finally find Tracy's body, potentially somewhere buried on that property. A spokesperson for the police said that 2 canine teams certified in human remains assisted in excavating the area. Members meticulously searched the property, but they did not find any human remains on Werfel's property. He had told reporters that he was never worried about them searching his property because he knew nothing was there.
I mean, I would go try to find some of these old mine shafts and search those because it seems like he knew more than he was letting on or telling people about. In January of this year, 2024, Warfel did have his second competency hearing. He appeared over a video from a state prison nursing home. And in the video feed, it showed him, who is now an old man, slumped in his chair, his eyes closed, and wrapped in a purple blanket all the way up to his neck. And this is really what, like, I picture my grandfather when he was nearing the end of his life. He couldn't get warm, and he was always just completely swaddled up in a blanket. And this man is over 90 years old at this point. He barely moved, and one reporter even mentioned that he simply looked dead. He was just lifeless sitting there. When the judge entered the courtroom, Warfel's public defender asked to have Warfel woken up so that he could listen and observe this hearing, but a nurse replied off screen that this is just how he is. This is who he is at this point. Warfel had been on palliative care since February of 2022 and wasn't getting any better.
Yeah, it's not looking good for getting any more information out of him at this point. The hearing on competency ended just as you would think. There was another continuance. The defender would say, I feel like we're spinning our wheels. It's a miracle that he's still alive, and there was no optimism for recovery or for him being able to stand trial for really anything. So they weren't able to move forward with the burglary or harassment charges. And Warfel has never been charged with anything related to the death of his wife or the disappearance of Tracy Kroh. The district attorney has told reporters that had investigators known of the many links between Warfel and the Kroh family, he probably would have been a person of interest from the get-go in this investigation. As of today, nobody has ever been charged with any crime aside from the perjury charges in connection to the disappearance of Tracy Kroh.
Tracy Kroh was just 17 years old when she went missing from Millersburg, Pennsylvania in August of 1989. She has green eyes and brown hair, and at the time of her disappearance, she was only 4'10" and 85 pounds. She was a tiny little thing, and she was 17 years old, so that's probably who she was going to be for the next several years, right? She was last seen wearing a light blue and white floral print shirt, blue and white shorts, and white sneakers. She was also wearing a silver Timex watch and a white gold class ring with a diamond. She had been carrying a purse with a horse or unicorn on it and was carrying a Roger Rabbit key ring. If you have any information about Tracy, please contact the Pennsylvania State Police at 717-362-8700. This is one of those cases, Jamie, where this could absolutely be solved. I think somebody knows something. We're not talking to the right people and they're not coming forward with this information. Perhaps if you increased the reward money, that might have some people willing to flip on their loved ones or family or friends. I mean, you mentioned earlier in this case that if you're watching any local or even national news right now, you know that Kentucky is very much in the thick of a manhunt for a man who shot several cars on I-75. That was only 20 minutes away from where you and I live. And within a week, it went from no reward to $10,000. And now at the time of this recording, it's all the way up to a $35,000 reward for information that could help police find the man that they think is responsible. I mean, why not offer some cash here and try to get this family some justice, even though several members of her family are not with us anymore?
Right. Tracy would be in her early 50s at this time. So anybody who did this, I mean, you would presume they were her age or older. So we're talking about people past middle age that could be considered for this crime. And maybe they're finally opening up about it. Maybe you've suspected them for a long time and you have an opportunity to ask about it. Maybe you saw a class ring in a box once when you were going through someone you know's house or someone's possessions or a storage unit or something. There is something out there. Her stuff couldn't have disappeared. They found stuff on the farm that was washed up from the creek. We have perjury charges about Matthew Webster had told Holly that he had raped and killed her. Could he be old Goofus that Warfel was talking about? I don't know that he is, but could he be? Is that ring somewhere that we could potentially stumble upon it? I don't know that Warfel, anything he said is helpful, honestly. He very well may have done it and he's just talking to talk, but I think it's going to involve somebody coming forward and saying, yes, this person told me a long time ago what happened, or yes, I found this piece of evidence in this place.
And if he knew who did it and where her body was, why not tell police unless you had some kind of involvement in it?
And at this point, you're 89. And again, he may not have mental capacity to remember or tell the story at this point. Maybe we've missed our window with him, but you're right. There is no reason for him not to tell the truth at this point if he knows it and if he is able to do so. But in most of these cases, like you said, John, somebody knows. People talk. It's almost impossible to keep that to yourself for decades at this point since she was taken. We do believe that she was dead. I think there could be a prosecution at this point without a body if they were just able to find some strong circumstantial evidence about who did it and maybe what happened. So I don't think we have to have a body here. I just think we need the right person coming forward with the right information. So I'm hopeful about this one. I think it could be solved, but for this long, there have been just so few strong leads. It's been, I don't know, usually, especially in a town like this, you're going to see a lot of people talking, even if they're saying lies. Like, you're going to have a lot of leads, rabbit holes you have to chase down, but there really hasn't been any meat to any of it, which makes it different from a lot of other cases we've talked about.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to what I said earlier. I think people know something and people just need to speak up. I can't imagine carrying this information around for as long as you have without speaking up. So I hope and I pray that it eats at you ferociously until you decide to speak up.
Absolutely. And I hope we do come forward when we do get this one solved. And if so, we will absolutely let you know that. We post a lot of updates over on TikTok and Instagram and on Facebook as well. Would love to have you guys follow us over there. We do videos from time to time with different things and a lot of case updates, a lot of breaking news that we can't just throw out on our podcast feed. We'll put on social media. So we're at True Crime Cast everywhere you could find us. We would love to have your follow.
And Jamie's being modest. He's in charge of TikTok and he is absolutely killing it right now. So I even enjoy, as much as I'm involved in the podcast, I love following True Crime Cast on TikTok because Jamie's not telling me everything he's doing, but he's over there breaking news all the time. So go check it out.
There's a lot going on and we appreciate you all being there. We appreciate the support you give us and we'll be back next week with another case.
Until next crime, this has been True Crime Cast.
You've listened to True Crime Cast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.